Welcome everyone to Financial Aid 101. We also refer to this as the ABCs of college financial aid. Note this will be recorded and you'll receive a link to the recording as a follow-up in several days. We are so grateful that you are here with us today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is a virtual workshop around financial aid. You are joining us with Zoom. For many of you, you may already be familiar with Zoom. Note that for this webinar, we have the Q&A enabled. So please add any questions that you have to the Q&A. We may answer your questions as we go through, or we may choose to answer them towards the end of our session. And our plan is to present some information to you first and then open it up for Q&A at the end. So today you are joining John Tamrat, College Financial Coach, and myself, Mara Curry, Director of Education Partnerships, innovative nonprofit that helps students seeking financial aid achieve college success by supporting financial decision making. We just want to give a huge thank you to the National Society of High School Scholars for inviting us to be here with you all this afternoon in the West Coast and evening on the East Coast. Thank you so much to Carly Bryans, Partnerships Development Manager, and Grace Dent, Senior Coordinator for Partnerships and Events, for all of their support with coordinating this virtual event for you and for us today. So our plan is to share with you the ABCs of college financial aid. A, for affordability matters. B, to build a financial aid plan. And C, for choosing with confidence. Now, before we get started, let's take a quick poll. We would like to know who is with us today. So if we can go ahead and launch that poll, there's a question asking you who is in our audience. How do you identify yourself? Are you a student, a parent? Are you a teacher or an instructional staff? Are you an administrator for a school or district or other non-teaching school or district staff? Go ahead and pick the item that is most in alignment with how you identify for today's event. We'll go ahead and give you a few more seconds. So again, how do you identify yourself as a student, parent, or a staff of a school or district? Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for filling that out. So we have about 50% of you are students and parents. We are so glad that you took the time to make financial aid planning a priority today. We hope that you find this useful. And just a note, please type questions into the Q&A at any time. Again, we'll either answer them as we go or we'll wait towards the end. So who is Moneythink and why are we here with you this evening talking about financial aid? So first, Moneythink is a nonprofit organization that harnesses the power of people and technology to bring transparency to college costs so that all students are equipped to invest in their futures. We do this by developing tools like Decided, which you'll find out about more in a little bit later. And Decided will empower students like you to invest in the future by building technology that clarifies college finances. So we're excited to partner with organizations like NSHSS, local nonprofits, scholarship organizations, to bring financial aid planning to you, the students, and to your families who are your champions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, John, who's going to get us started on really the nuts and bolts of this webinar today, which is Financial Aid 101, the terminology behind financial aid that we need to know. So John, why don't you go ahead and walk us through the terms we need to know related to costs and what we need to know about financial aid types.
All right, thank you. So first, I'd like to quickly introduce us to our financial aid concepts. And then we'll go a little more into detail about our web-based app, Undecided, how that can help you make sense of all this information for this year. So these are the things that you need to know. First thing is cost of attendance, which is also referred to as COA on some websites and documents. This cost of attendance includes two different types of costs you need to be aware of. The first is the direct cost. This essentially will include tuition, room and board, and fees, as well as health services that may be required, but you can get them waived if you have health insurance already. Secondly, you need to be mindful of indirect costs. So these are sometimes also called unbilled costs that are not directly billed to you by your college, so they're unbilled therefore. This includes travel like transit, books, supplies, personal expenses like medication or Netflix subscriptions that students will have to pay out of pocket on their own that the college is not going to bill them for, but they need to accommodate and plan for accordingly. It is also important to know that there are different types of financial aid that you'll need to explore, compare, and make decisions about. The first type are grants and scholarships. They're both examples of gift aid. This is money that you don't have to pay back. Then the other type of aid are loans and federal work study. They are not gift aid. Loans you do have to pay back, and most of the time with interest, which means you'll owe more than you borrow. Work study is something your college will need to offer to you as a student. You don't get work study job. You don't get your work study job until you're already in college and you've already been eligible to receive that on your award letters. So it's very important as you learn more about financial aid to be clear which aid is free so that the ones that you don't have to pay back, because that's what you want to get the most out of, right? Then there are loans, which you want to keep low or at minimum cost. And so shopping around is going to be ideal to make sure you get the best deal possible at the end. And then being mindful of work study. You need to follow up during college to get the job, and then you'll want to be careful about not taking on too many hours while you're in college as well, right? So when it comes to college affordability and financial aid, the most important task to complete right now is the FAFSA application. If you've not gotten started in this process, you can take the first step, which will be to create an FSA ID. Both you, the student, and the parent will need to have an FSA ID, which you will use to access and sign and submit the FAFSA application. To apply, you'll need to provide your name, date of birth, social security number, and parents without a social security number will not be able to apply for a PIN. Instead, they will have to print out the signature page of the FAFSA they signed and mail it in, which does take a longer process. So if this is something you have to do, make sure you get started on this process a lot earlier. So the FAFSA application itself are officially open on October 1st. So you can start completing that application by going to the website listed on the slide right there. Your student will also need to, parents will also need to help students complete their FAFSA application, especially when it comes to the parent section and filling out prior year tax information. Thankfully, the application this year has been getting streamlined to make it a bit more easier to complete many of those options. Also letting you use the IRS data retrieval tool. So the IRS data retrieval tool, or it's known as in short phrases, IRS DRT, allows the student and parent who filed the tax return with the IRS to essentially access those tax information needed to complete your FAFSA form and to transfer the required data directly into the student's FAFSA form. If you are eligible to use the IRS DRT, we highly recommend using the tool for several reasons. One, it's the easiest way to provide your tax information. It's the best way of ensuring that your FAFSA form has accurate tax information. You won't need to provide a copy of yours or your parents' tax return if you're utilizing this or you're able to use it. Also, if you're using the IRS DRT to transfer tax information, that information will not be displayed on your FAFSA form. For your protection, the answers to each question instead is replaced with a quotation of transfer from IRS. Next, although you need to complete the FAFSA application to be eligible for financial aid from the federal, state government, as well as an aid given from the school, not everyone is eligible or can complete the FAFSA application. So if you are a US citizen, permanent resident, refugee, part of a humanitarian status group, or under any of the critical criteria that we listed above, you should apply. You're eligible to complete the FAFSA application, and we recommend that you do so as soon as possible. Now, if you're an undocumented student, you should not complete the FAFSA application. For undocumented California students, you can instead apply and complete the DREAM Act application, which will be very similar to the FAFSA application. If you are unable to apply for the FAFSA application, make sure to do the following. Check to see if you can qualify for in-state tuition. You can do this by reaching out to the colleges to find out. Some colleges often have special funds available for undocumented students. To apply for this financial aid, you may have to fill out the CC and financial aid profile or the college-owned forms. So reach out directly to financial aid offices to get more detail on this. Now, if you're getting ready to start your FAFSA application, make sure you have the following documents together so you can complete the application in one go if possible. You can also save your progress and come back to the FAFSA as needed. You will need the following information shown on the PowerPoint slide. And a reminder, if you're able to use the IRS data retrieval tool, this will assist you in transferring most of the federal tax information asked of you in the form. And again, if you use that option, all that data will be hidden, and instead it will show that transfer from IRS data. So you don't have to worry about your student or other people seeing your financial information. That is kind of being protected with that algorithm already. All right, so when you're filling out the FAFSA form, one of the most common trip ups that we've noticed or have heard from is identifying who the student's FAFSA parent is. So if you want, take a look at the diagram below just to get acclimated with that. So the diagram will help you identify who you should list on your FAFSA parent and who needs to actually fill out the parent part as well as the financial part as well. So if a student's parents are married to each other, then you'll need to report both of the parents' information. If both parents live together in the same household but are not married, you still need to report both of the parents' information. If you live with one parent more than the other parent over the past 12 months, report the parent information on the FAFSA, regardless of who claims the student as a dependent on that tax form. If the parent you receive the most of the support from has remarried, then you will need to report the information of your step-parent as well on that form. So once you've completed and electronically signed and submitted your FAFSA form with your FSA ID PIN that both the student and parent will have and will need to submit and sign with, once that is completed, make sure you keep a lookout for your student aid report. Now, a student aid report will be sent to the student's email account that was used to apply for the FAFSA. You can also log back into the FAFSA to view the student report. This is the report that contains the EFC, also known as the Estimated Family Contribution, which will determine the amount of financial aid the student will be eligible for the upcoming year. If you are selected for verification, make sure to read the required next steps that you may need to complete so your SAR can be finalized. All right, so we just covered the financial aid terms about costs and types of aid. We've touched a little bit on that FAFSA application. Actually, let me hand it back to Maren now to take us to the next part.
Thank you so much, John, and thanks for walking us through the basics of what we need to understand conceptually to talk about financial aid today, the costs related to college, as well as the types of financial aid that we should make sure we are applying for by completing financial aid applications like the FAFSA. As John's mentioned, we've just talked about these basic terms. And the reason why we're discussing financial aid right now at this specific time, being the end of October, is because you're right here, right? As students and families that are working with your students, you're right here in this blue bubble of applying to colleges and completing financial aid applications. Hopefully you're also applying to scholarships, more on that in a little bit. So after you complete these applications, though, there's a little bit more that needs to be done. So we wanted to make sure that we took this opportunity to walk you through the whole picture of your student journey, right? So you're at the beginning applying, then you're going to want to wait for your college acceptance letters and your financial aid award letters that will come from the colleges that accept you. And you're going to want to track all of this information that could come through the mail, it could come through email, it could come through student portals that you will get access to when you're accepted by colleges and you decide to commit to them. So you'll want to make sure that you have your award letters for all the colleges that accept you before you make your decision. At least that's something that we highly recommend. That then gives you the opportunity to do what is in this third bubble, which is to actually compare your options and then make an informed decision before you enroll. So again, just highlighting these two green bubbles one more time. The next step after you complete your applications that I know are coming up in the next several weeks and months will then be to wait for acceptance letters, wait for your award letters, and then compare your options. We really encourage you to take the time and compare your options before you enroll, because once you choose your college, you'll need to accept or decline your financial aid package or the various elements of it, and then focus on getting ready for college, which includes this last bubble that we see, of collecting your supplies, completing orientation, and registering for classes. So we wanted to we want to talk to you for the rest of this webinar about this next step of looking for your award letters and reviewing them. Because this step happens to be very complex and challenges students, families, and educators alike. Now, why is this so complicated, the specific step of collecting and reviewing your financial aid award letters? Why do students and families struggle every single year to talk about financial aid and college affordability? The reason is because the nation's $1.6 trillion in student debt is fueled by confusing and unclear pricing in college costs. And you see a little bit of how this is playing out in the award letters on the screen. On the right side, you see an award letter for college. You see that sometimes counselors are actually having to track the college costs on a whiteboard. This is part of the reality that we see across the country, just because the information is not that easy to find, not that easy to collect and then compare across colleges. A new report on student debt in the class of 2019 shares that more than 6 in 10 college seniors who graduated from public and private nonprofit colleges last year in 2019 had student loan debt, and they owed an average of just over $28,000. And we believe that the debt is fueled by confusing and unclear pricing in college costs. And the unclear pricing is due to financial aid awards that are part of the problem. As you're seeing here on the slide, there's over 140 different terms used just to describe loans in a financial aid award package. Sometimes the word loan isn't even used. What does that mean? It means that sometimes families don't even know when loans are being presented to them. Then we see that 70% of letters sometimes group all aid together, and they don't explain the differences between what John just walked us through, the importance between grants and scholarships, loans and work study. And that's especially problematic, right? Because of what John walked us through in terms of the differences between those types of aid. Huge difference between gift aid and aid that you have to pay back or earn. Some of that money is available before you start school, so you can use it to pay bills and expenses right away. And then other money like work study, you don't earn until later. So the problem of unclear award letters and the fact that they're different from college to college across the country has led students and families like you to navigate this process with limited guidance and often poor information all on your own. And the information, the really critical piece of it that is hard to find, is how affordable the college is for you and your family. And why is it important to really think about college affordability? There's a lot of different factors I'm sure that you all have looked at when looking at the colleges you're going to apply to this fall. Or if you're a junior, it looks like we do have some juniors with us as you're building your college list for next year. It's important to note that 70% of college dropouts leave school, and they owe that to financial concerns, pressing financial concerns, which means that also college students have financial aid, loan debt without a degree. We are also seeing that students who are the most impacted in terms of not having resources because they're low income tend to have higher rates of default as their higher income peers, meaning they are challenged in paying them back after college. So how do we figure out what an affordable college is? And that's what we want to spend a few minutes talking to you about today. So at Moneythink, we consider a college to be affordable if the gap is less than $7,500. And as you look at this chart, you'll see that across the top, you have affordable, somewhat affordable, not affordable. And I'm going to walk you through each one. So in each one, I want you to look at the information in that column to really help concretize it. So a gap of less than $7,500 means that a student will be able to cover this gap reasonably with a combination of loans, work, and family support. You can even meet some of that gap with scholarships. A student would be able to do that by taking no more than $5,500 in loans, which is the maximum that we recommend because it allows you to take advantage federal loans that have lower interest rates. And you can also take advantage of working less hours, like 10 or less hours during the school year. So something to note is that research actually shows that approximately 30% of award letters include no costs. And again, John just walked us through those two very important pieces of information, costs and the types of aid. So when you don't actually get your costs in your award letter, this means that you see how much you're getting in terms of financial aid, but you don't have expenses to compare that to. So what good is it to know that you're getting $20,000 in grants if you don't know that your gap is maybe $40,000? You need to actually know your total cost of attendance to figure out your gap. So we'll talk a little bit more about our tool Decided, which can help you with that in a bit. So we've just talked about that first column, right? Affordable. So the next level, we consider a school to be somewhat affordable if the gap is between $7,500 and $11,500. These schools can still be a great option. It just may mean needing more support from family in terms of savings. You may need to work more hours, like 15 to 20. You may need to take out more in loans than are recommended $5,500, which could mean taking Parent Plus loans or private loans. So that's just something to consider. And the more hours that you work, the more, of course, that would impact the hours that you have to commit to your academic studies and other college activities. So then the last column is about not being affordable. So we consider a school with a gap over $11,500 as unaffordable. And that it doesn't mean that that's not a good option for your student. And we want to talk to you about all of the various factors your student should consider as they think about a really strong fit for them. Affordability is one of them, but we do want to make sure that you're thinking about if a college is unaffordable, then a student at this college may struggle to cover the college bill, even with the things that we spoke about, like family support, working while in school, and taking more than the recommended amount in loans. First, in terms of loans and how much you take out, just a note that taking large amounts of loans is risky because it results in higher monthly payments when it's time to pay them back, which could risk defaulting on loans in the future. And if you do have to work more than 20 hours, we have seen in research that that can be detrimental to your success in the classroom. So the recommendation really is to stick to less than 20 hours when possible. So we hope that that gives you a better sense of what you're looking for when you're thinking about college in terms of college affordability. We've been using this word affordable and affordability a lot, and we will continue to. And just let us know if you have any questions about anything we've just described around how we define it. But now that we have talked to you about the definition of affordability from Moneythink's lens, the question we're sure you're asking yourself now, scratching your head, is how do I pay for college? And that's where Decided comes in. So we believe that Decided is your free tool to plan for college by helping you understand if the financial aid award packages you are offered are affordable or not. Once you know how affordable the college is for you and your family, you can also consider whether or not it meets other fit factors that John is going to walk you through in a moment, like diversity, distance from home, and graduation rate. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to John and let him walk you through what Decided looks and feels like, and how you can use it to support you with your college and financial aid planning for the rest of this year.
Thanks. As we stated at the beginning of this webinar, our mission at Moneythink is to bring transparency to the college costs so that all students like you are equipped to invest in your future. Our goal is to put you, the student, in the driver's seat by essentially equipping you with all the information you need to make a strong, well-informed enrollment decision. Decided encompasses then our 10 plus years of expertise in supporting students and families with financial literacy and college access work. We've combined our expertise with student-centered design to inform the creation and development of Decided, resulting in a tool that is student and family centered and takes the guesswork out of college affordability. On the next slide, you'll see that currently students are making ill-informed enrollment decisions based on a lot of confusing data. And many advisors don't have the capacity to support students in understanding their award letters. Even for college access organizations that are out there supporting students with this, it's very laborious, and this support is not readily accessible to many students. Decided is reshaping the way students can go about making their enrollment decision by making sure that they have all the important information needed in one place, and an effort to remove the stress and the uncertainty when it comes to the enrollment decisions. Next slide. Decided takes the guesswork out of college affordability, and we do this by using OCR, which is our optical character recognition tool, along with machine learning to transform a lot of confusing and complex award letter images into clear and consistent formats. Our objective is to help students make the holistic college enrollment decision informed by the accurate understanding of the cost of their college options in order to increase their chance of the students obtaining a bachelor's degree with a sustainable amount of debt. This can be attained by supporting students by 1, quickly and accurately supporting them understand their award letter. By 2, helping them compare the affordability of all of their options so they can be then enabled to make an informed decision. And 3, supporting them in knowing the full cost of college and helping them prepare to create a plan to pay for it. So one of the most confusing parts of the award letter that students and families have stated over and over is really understanding what the actual bill is. So essentially, what should they expect to be responsible for? So once you upload an award letter to a college on Decided, you'll be able to clearly see and understand what the cost you will be responsible for. Decided will automate the calculation of all the free money, like we talked about, which is the gift aid on your award letter. So any grants and scholarships will be applied to the cost of attendance at that school. Once that calculation is done for students, you'll be able to see what's left to cover under college bills. So what is the billable cost that you need to be ready to pay to that college directly? And then for any expenses that are not due to the college, that will be reflected under the life budget for expenses like personal expenses, travel, books, and supplies. And we incorporate this part to make sure that students have a high view of what the actual cost will come once they're a student, right? We want you to plan for this and be prepared for it. So Decided demystifies a process that's cryptic by design. After students upload their award letters to the app, they can immediately compare school options. The most pressing information already, like the affordability, will be presented at first glance. At first glance with colors, the thumbs up and the thumbs down that you're seeing on the screen will help make sense of the costs for students. And then as students scroll down, they can access the relevant information about the school, like we mentioned, graduation rates, diversity, campus environment, or even the average salaries after graduation, which are all important factors that tie into affordability and just seeing what that college can offer for your future. By simplifying key aspects of the college fit, providing all these data points at your fingertips, then you're more empowered to move forward with a very confident and optimistic decision when it comes to your enrollment. And lastly, research has shown that 70% of college dropouts are really linked to pressing financial concerns, right? So a major factor for this number is due to the students facing high unexpected or just unplanned financial costs that come up that lead to students taking out more in student debt or needing to work a lot of hours while in school, which then jeopardizes their success in the classroom. So to combat and mitigate some of these unexpected and unplanned financial costs, Decided provides further supplementary support through our guides and recommendations on financial planning and how to effectively leverage the money that you have from yourself that you've saved up or worked, money or support you're going to get from family, how to juggle work study, and how to think about student loans as part of your financial plan to cover all of your costs for the upcoming year. Now, as you start your college search and financial aid planning journey, it's also important to know how you can use outside scholarships, student loans, and work study as part of your complete package for financial planning for college. Now, some of you are already working hard to apply to many outside scholarships, which is always great to do, but we want you to be mindful of a couple things. So here are some tips to consider when thinking about outside scholarship. Unless you've won a scholarship, do not count that money when making an enrollment decision or making a financial plan, because if you account for that and you don't end up getting it, you're going to put yourself in a vulnerable situation, which we are hoping that we can help you avoid. If you are awarded a scholarship and the money will be given directly to you and not to the college, then we recommend not reporting that to that college and instead treating it as cash to help you pay for your school expenses. If you've been awarded a scholarship and it will be paid directly to the university or the college that you're going to attend or you enroll at, we recommend first making sure you check in to see what your college scholarship displacement policy is, or reaching out to the financial aid office to find out a little more about that. So financial aid displacement is used to describe a situation where a student has received an award letter from their college and then tells the college they have also won a private scholarship. Some colleges may respond to this by reducing that amount in grants and awards to the student by the size of the new scholarship. So if they got $5,000 scholarship, they may reduce their grants by $5,000. That's the displacement. Note that colleges can't subtract from the federal Pell Grant. That will always remain intact regardless of how many scholarship winnings you receive. Now, you might be wondering, you might say, well, what's the point of applying to scholarships then if it's going to be potentially taken away or reduced? Well, the good news is that 80% of schools won't cut into your student grants for receiving outside scholarships. So pursuing scholarship money can still help you reduce on your reliance to borrow more in loans or need to work more hours while in school. If your college does practice scholarship displacement, then we recommend talking to financial aid office to see if they can instead reduce the amount of loans they offer to you or reduce the amount of work study they offer to you instead of the grants, because you don't have to pay that money back. We want to make sure that stays at the highest amount as possible. And then next, for the majority of the students going to college, it means needing to take out some amount of loans, especially for Pell eligible or low income students who will need to consider loan as an option. So then it's important to know what source of loans to actually look at first. Federal subsidized and unsubsidized loans are your best options because they offer competitive interest rates, favorable terms, repayment options, and potential loan forgiveness depending on the career and jobs you have after graduation. Subsidized is even better because you don't actually accrue interest until after you're done with school. The interest that does accrue is actually going to get paid by the Department of Education. So if you took out $5,000, by the time you graduate, it will still be $5,000. Student loans can be a really good investment when you make a very well-informed enrollment decision. This means that if you enroll at a college that will really serve you and support you in reaching your goal and objectives for the future, then the loan you take out can be a good investment towards your future. However, if you don't make an informed choice about your college and instead you rush, choose what others tell you to choose, or go just based on name recognition or popularity, it may not be a good investment if it ends up leading to you spending more time completing your degree or going and not completing your degree at all, because then you'll be left with debt with nothing tangible to show for it, right? When it comes to private loans, those are the most risky to take out. So if you have to take them out to afford college, it is even more imperative and crucial to make a very good, smart choice that really will align with what you want out of your future and your goals and objectives. And as long as that college is potentially aligning with that, then it may be reasonable. But if it's not going to align with your future goals and objectives and that college is not going to support you in that pathway, then we think you should reconsider that because we don't want to take out a whole bunch of loans and be in a vulnerable situation down in the future. So next up is one of the things that students can sometimes really get confused about is work study. So work study and how it can be used as part of their financial aid planning for college. Work study essentially are jobs that are designated to students who have completed the FAFSA application. So if you have not completed FAFSA application, you can't even be eligible for work study. Once you complete FAFSA application and you've demonstrated the financial need to qualify for the federal work study program, that is how you'll be offered work study. So the work study program is very popular and the funding available at each college will vary. With that in mind, the earlier you submit the FAFSA, the better your chance of qualifying and receiving work study in your award letter. If you are offered work study in your award letter, we always recommend that you accept them just like all grants and scholarships offered. But we need you to remember that accepting work study on your award letter does not guarantee you earning these funds. For that, you have to apply and work those hours on campus to receive these funds, or off campus if you find an off-campus work study position. Working while going to school, again, is a great way to help you pay a portion of your college expenses, but the key will always be to making sure not to work so many hours that will have negative impact when it comes to your success in the classroom. So if you plan on working to help cover your costs, we recommend working again between 10 to 15 hours a week and trying to avoid 20 plus hours, because that will have negative impact on your success in the classroom, as well as taking away opportunities like networking, studying abroad, or internship placements that can really align with your future objectives, help you with your future career that you're seeking out, that you may be missing out because you're working too many hours. Now, we've covered a lot, but I hope you found what we've shared useful. I'm going to pass it back to Myrna now so we can do some reviews and some takeaways and recommendations before our Q&A.
Thank you so much, John, and thanks again for all of those great tips around, especially the details for work study, scholarships, and loans. I responded to one question in the Q&A about when you can apply to scholarships so that I didn't have to interrupt you, but just a reminder to folks that there are lots of different scholarships available to apply to. Yes, many of them are available in your high school senior year, but we encourage you to take a look at scholarships as early as the beginning of high school. And there's scholarships even for graduate school transfer students as well. So if there are any follow-up questions to scholarships, loans, or work study, please feel free to type them into the Q&A. Now, before we jump into those takeaways and recommendations that John mentioned, I thought I would just take a second for the few educators that are on the webinar to just let you know that in addition to the student-facing free web-based app, so that was another question that I answered. So it's a website that you can then use on your computer, your Chromebook, your tablet, or your phone. It's free. You would set up an account as a student. And what we want to share with you is that we've also created a way for your advisors or for educators on this webinar to also use the tool with your students. And it's called the Advisor Dashboard. So to support you in using it, we're going to, once all of these tools are released in the next several weeks or next month, we'll have resources like videos and checklists to make it easy for you all to use this and to make it and to help advisors sign up for an account for the Advisor Dashboard. So there are two main account types just to share out. There will be those who will manage the Advisor Dashboard for their school or organization, and those who will be managing students and groups. So there'll be both types of accounts available for educators and college access organizations that are interested in using the dashboard. And in terms of what you would be able to see, as you're seeing here as an example in this slide, you'd be able to see all of your students and the progress they're making in using Decided, including adding colleges, uploading award letters, and those affordability markers. So for any, we're going to have a slide at the very end with QR codes you can take a picture of to sign up. So students and families, please sign up with the student and family form, and advisors can learn more with that form. So takeaways and recommendations. What are the things that we really want to make sure that you all keep in mind now that we've spent about 40 minutes talking through Financial Aid 101 and the ABCs of financial aid with you. Great job again, John, for everything that you've highlighted. So a few takeaways. Please complete the FAFSA if you're eligible, and there were some questions around eligibility that I believe John may have answered earlier that I responded to in the Q&A, but if there's still any questions about eligibility for the FAFSA, please feel free to add that to the Q&A. But regardless of how much you make, we really want to encourage you to not put yourself out of having opportunities and options. Complete the FAFSA. The class of 2018 missed out on almost $3 billion in free money for college because of not completing the FAFSA. And just as a note, it's not just about not starting the application, it's about not completing all the steps. So earlier, John mentioned how you sign, the certain things like you need to do the FSA ID in advance. One of the questions that was posted is, can you look at the FAFSA before you start your account? Yes, you can. You can get a PDF. If you Google 2020-2021 FAFSA, you'll be able to get a PDF of it so you can see the questions in advance. But do not be worried about just exploring the FAFSA. Start your account. They did a really great job of making sure to have little highlights throughout the form so that if you have a question about a field or something, it really walks you through it. So please complete the FAFSA if you're a high school senior transfer student getting ready to transfer. And just note that you'll have to complete the FAFSA. You'll need to complete your financial aid applications every year that you're in college. Also, just a note that you may have other forms you need to complete, like the CSS profile, depending on what colleges you apply to. So if you are selected for verification on the FAFSA or from college financial aid, which does happen, our recommendation is to respond to those requests for verification immediately. So, one recommendation, if you're still completing financial aid and college applications right now, we highly encourage you to use one email like the one email address that you will keep checking so you do not miss out on all the important information around your college, your financial aid, and your scholarship applications. And as soon as you get an email that says anything about verification, you'll want to respond to it right away. And if you ever have any questions about what the college is sending you, call the college financial aid. And often when you go to their college website and search financial aid, they'll have a phone number or an email. And it does happen. So to the point, don't be alarmed if you're selected for verification. Just make sure to respond quickly. And then lastly, keep a lookout for Decided. As we mentioned, you'll be able to create a free account if you're a student. And for any advisors, you'll be able to support your students with Advisor Dashboard. And you'll be able to use it to add your colleges, as John showed you in the screenshots, upload your award letters, and compare them based on those affordability markers that we reviewed with you earlier. Our hope is that you will confidently enroll in a college based on a really informed review of all of your options. And then the last note, because we know there's interest here in applying to scholarships, and you all should be applying to as many scholarships as possible, you want to be careful of not making an enrollment decision that is dependent on getting a scholarship, because it could put you in a financially vulnerable position later. And that means that maybe you're applying to a scholarship where it says it's going to pay $10,000 every year for 4 years, and you're still applying to it. You just don't want to put all your eggs in that basket. Be sure to have a backup plan to cover that if you don't get that scholarship. And we want to go ahead and start the FAQ in just a few moments. I see you all have started to type several questions. So John, you may want to take a look and see which ones you want to prioritize. I've answered a few already, but several have just come through. While he's looking at those questions and prioritizing them, just a few frequently asked questions we tend to get asked about Decided. So again, it's free. Again, it's a web-based app, not a mobile app, so you don't have to download it. And you will not be typing in information for your award letters. You'll be taking screenshots and uploading them. It's one of the, we're really excited about sharing this with you because as an organization, like our focus is on helping Pell eligible, first generation, underserved students, but this tool is really useful for all students because again, it helps to lift up all of that information that we said earlier is really hard to find in your award letters. And we want you to know that student privacy is of utmost concern for us. It's one of our principles, so your student data will be protected when you use Decided. So, all right, John, are you ready to take a few questions? I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself. And if you wanna say the question that you is being asked and then go ahead and answer it.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm gonna start off with the first couple of questions that are relating to the FAFSA. A couple of the questions came in. If you can apply to FAFSA as a junior going to college, that's the first one. So to clarify, that probably means you're doing dual enrollment. If you're doing dual enrollment, you're not filing FAFSA. So it's once you are a first year student full-time going to college, that's when you're gonna be doing your FAFSA. So essentially your senior year, that's when you're filing your FAFSA. I just wanna clarify that. I hope that made it a little bit clear, but there's a difference between dual enrollment versus filing FAFSA to go as your first year student. So you're not counted as a first year student when you're doing dual enrollment as well. And then another one that was in line with that was, can juniors complete the FAFSA application? It's meant to be when you're ready to go to college, so you can't do it early. The reason behind this is every year students will have to apply for FAFSA. So although you do it your senior year, you're gonna do it again your freshman year in college, sophomore, junior, until you're done with college. And the reason we do it every year is to make sure that we are getting the correct estimated family contribution, which FAFSA does. So certain times families might have an increase in income or a drop in income, especially during times of COVID, as a perfect example. So that way it can give you the most up-to-date financial need that you need, which is why you can't do it so early. All right, let's look at the next ones. So now there's also questions about scholarships. When do you have to apply for scholarships at the same time or when you're applying for colleges? So just to kind of gather that all together for scholarships, you should always be looking to apply to scholarship, and there's not a time where you need to stop. So you can start applying for scholarships as a sophomore, as a ninth grader, even middle school. You just have to search for ones that are relevant to you and your interest, and then follow that up. Because if you're able to do that a lot earlier and you get a little bit of money stashed away from scholarships already preparing you, you're in a better position for your future. If you are right now trying to decide, do I apply for a scholarship right now? Yes, you should be applying for your scholarship at the same time as you're applying for your colleges, doing your FAFSA, and throughout the whole process. And even when you're in college, search out scholarships. This is only going to make the burden of affording college a lot easier for you and your family. So don't look at it as a start-stop, but a continuous thing that you're doing all the way throughout. And then Meredith, would you be able to quickly just name a couple of our the scholarship websites that families can refer to and students can refer to take a look at what scholarships they can apply?
I would. Give me just one quick second. I was pulling that up. And what we'll also hope to do is provide some of these links so that when you get the recording, this can be part of that follow-up, including the sign-up links for Decided. So a couple of websites to be familiar with, and I'm just going to list them out, and you might want to just Google for these. So yeah, FastWeb, scholarships.com, Scholarship America. There's MALDEF, MALDEF, Scholarship Resource Guide. For undocumented students, there's Immigrants Rising, which has scholarship lists. So those are just a few. And again, we'll be happy to help ensure that there's some of these links that are included with the follow-up with the recording. Thanks, John. And are there any that and the other thing that you should note is that there are scholarships that may not be accessible necessarily through those kind of websites because they're local. There's also scholarships that are going to be available at the colleges specifically you apply to, which John may have said, but just reiterating that. So you might want to check just also Googling scholarships like in your city or in your zip code. But like here in California, for example, like in Santa Clara County, there's several local scholarships. In Alameda County, there's several local scholarships. So you also want to check with your high school counselors. Often your high school counselors in your districts maintain lists of local scholarships as well.
Yep. Just to tie that into it and then go to the next question as well. Just a reminder, everyone has a tendency to look for those big scholarships, but there's a ton of scholarships that are smaller that are going unfunded. So look for your local community. Sometimes high schools offer them, community centers offer them. So look at what's around you locally, but also look at what your interests are, what your hobbies are, and see if you can find scholarships that are relevant to you. And the more you apply to, the easier it gets, honestly, because the more time you get practice filling out applications, putting essays down, you'll get a feel for it, and then it becomes a much more streamlined process. So it's not a one and done type of thing, but a consistently going through it. And you know, you can get great results depending on how much work you're putting into it and how much time you're investing.
Could I add one more thing?
Yeah.
The other thing is because we're now kind of like in this virtual universe, like there's definitely a lot more opportunity to connect with current college students at the colleges that you're going to connect with students who are at different locations. So I would just also make sure to connect with folks who are attending the colleges that you're interested in. If they have open houses, they tend to be virtual now. You can attend and ask the questions of what kind of scholarships are being offered or what kind of scholarships folks received. Let's pass that buck on and make sure that we're sharing scholarships we get with other folks.
Great. Now I'm gonna get to the next question, and I'm gonna summarize it into like multiple that I saw in there. One is a question asking about how do assets or investments or savings impact financial aid. So to answer that question, again, so families must report the assets owned. Now, when you're reporting these numbers, there's different ways that those numbers get used in financial aid. So any money or assets that's counted from the student perspective, colleges will expect those families to use up to 20% or much more than a parent. So a dependent, so a student who owns an asset or works a lot of hours, more of that percentage of that money will be expected to be used to pay for their college. So this is true even if the student's assets are funded by other people's money. So that means grandparents or others. But on the bright side, like a 529 account that's owned by a student is actually gonna get counted as a parent asset. those assets have less of a percentage. So colleges will expect parents to use usually up to 5.64% of their unprotected assets towards that. Now, when they're saying assets, essentially, they're talking about protected, meaning if you have a retirement account or 5029 plan, things like that, a retirement account that's a 401k through the government or that structure, you get a little more protection. But if you have assets or investments, let's say a second house, that will be used against you because it's not your first house. And so that value of that house can be used as a way to say you can support your student with more money. So I want to just give a quick overview of that at a higher level. Again, as a family, if you have a financial advisor, that would be the best way to direct and speak with to figure out which is the best path for your family and what to use the money. Because for some people, it might be better than to use some of the savings that they have to pay down their mortgage, because that brings down their debt. That means that money then you should expect a little bit more from financial aid, but that all depends on your own specific circumstance. And then next question was, after you apply to FAFSA, when do you know how much you get? So the first thing you've got to wait for is your SAR, your student aid report that we went over with. Once you get that, the SAR can give you the number for your Pell. So if you're Pell eligible, it'll show you how much you're able to get from the federal Pell amount, whether it's a full amount or a partial amount. And then the second part is, for like California, we have Cal Grant. You can go through Web Grant to figure out what your eligibility is and what you're getting. But more specifically, it gets all put together by each school you've applied to and enrolled at and you've been accepted to. So once you're accepted, you finish all your financial aid, your college has received your SAR, they know all that information, and now they're going to create your package. That all depends on the school's timeline, but the earlier you submit that, the faster they can release that out. Some colleges end up releasing that as soon as they get them. Some wait to a certain time. So sometimes they might wait till March or April to release them all at once. So it's kind of dependent, but the number one factor that impacts how soon you get that award letter is how soon you complete your financial aid and follow up with the required steps if you're selected for verification. If you are selected for verification, don't hold that process up. Make sure you get on it right away. Make sure you fill everything you need and document it. You may need to do that for each college if they also flag you for verification. It is tedious, but it's worth doing the work right when you get that information rather than waiting till April or May when decision day's coming up. You don't know what the financial aid package you're going to receive from all these colleges. There was one question I wanted to make sure I get as well. It was about who to list on the parent on FAFSA. I think it was stated that one of the parents hasn't had contact. So if parents are not married and only one parent is responsible for the student, then that's the parent that you need to fill out on the FAFSA. That's who should be on there. If they're married and they're living at home together again, then it's both. But that is if we go back to the screen right there, that will help show you the trajectory of that. That's the easiest way to find it. You can also find this diagram on studentaid.gov as well to get a little more clarification of how to look at it, who should be put on there. Again, to remind, it's not based on tax information. So just because a parent claims a student on their tax form, that does not mean that's the parent that's automatically going to be the one on their FAFSA. There's also questions for the website for DecideEd. We will have actually a QR reader you can scan to subscribe so you can be notified and updated when DecideEd goes live. Also, if you want to learn a little bit more about DecideEd and about Moneythink in general, you can find out more at moneythink.org. Here's the QR reader if you want to be able to make sure you subscribe and are always notified when it's open so you can create your account as soon as possible. There it is for you right now. You can take your phones out, and when you scan it, it should take you to our website to stay updated. And then there's another question on scholarships. Is there a limit to how many scholarships you can use? No, there's not a limit. Just be mindful again with the recommendations we give you. Each scholarship has their own process. Some might give the money directly to you to use, while others might give it to your colleges. So be aware of that and then have a plan of how you're going to address it based on that. Also be mindful that not all scholarships are renewable. So just because you got a lot of scholarship, make sure, are they 1 year or are they renewable? Because if you got 20,000 in scholarships, but they're all 1 year, that's going to have great impact for your next 3 years. Are you going to be able to afford that college without that money being there? So really pay attention to all the terms, how much you're getting, but is it renewable for how many years? Because that all determines your affordability of college and the choices that you make. And the SAR acronym is the Student Aid Report. There's another question that was in there.
Thanks, John. While John's looking for more questions to answer, folks, it's 4:57. This webinar ends at 5. We're willing to go a few more minutes past if you'd like to stay on and keep adding your questions. But just as a reminder to what John mentioned below, if you scan those QR codes, scan the one for students and families, you'll get added to our listserv. So if you can't stay with us past 5, please go ahead and just make sure to do that before you jump off. And look out for the email from the National Society of High School Scholars with any follow-up. Thank you all for joining us today, and we appreciate your time. And again, we'll stay on for a few more minutes, but just wanted you all to know that we're coming up on time, but we'll keep answering questions for another few minutes. Go ahead, Joe.
Yep. So I see 3 questions. One is, when uploading award letters, can my social security number be blocked and that of my parents? So when you get an award letter, your award letter shouldn't have your social security number on there, one. And any important information or identifying information from your award letter, we are trying to anonymize it already, because we are taking into account student privacy information. So all that data that we're actually just scraping is really just the numbers we're attaching to the college that you're selected within the Decided app. So we're not trying to hold on to any valuable information as far as social security number, names, and all that stuff. Just to give you a heads up, you can find out more about our privacy as well with our links and information. Once Decided goes live, you can read through it to make sure that you're satisfied with the policy that we put in place. Can you apply for FAFSA in graduate school? Yes, you can apply for FAFSA in graduate school. Remember, again, FAFSA is not only for grants, but also for loans that you're able to take out, right? So for FAFSA, you're able to get Pell Grant for 6 years, up to 6 years. So if you got to the point where you graduate in 4 years and you had 2 more years of eligibility, by applying to FAFSA, you're potentially going to be able to use Pell Grants for graduate school. On top of that, that's the only way you're going to get access for any loans that you potentially need to take out for. And that's what I wanted to remind before I get to the next question again. The real importance of FAFSA is not just to think about, oh, maybe my family's not Pell eligible, so there's no point for me to apply. The importance of it is that, one, it lets you have the option of getting max financial aid, which schools use FAFSA to determine that. 2, even though you might not get a Pell Grant, a lot of schools will use that information to offer you maybe scholarships or grants that they have institutionally. And another factor is it allows you the opportunity to get favorable loans that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. Because without that, you're going to be going to private loans that are not going to be as favorable compared to a subsidized loan, which is being covered interest-free. So there's no reason for you to pass that option up if you're able and are eligible to apply for FAFSA. And then, does applying for an early decision provide any financial benefits to students? So again, applying for early decision, that's much more about enrollment and getting accepted to a college. Financial aid stuff, if the school gives financial aid as soon as they get all the award letters, and I mean, not award letters, as soon as they get your FAFSA, then that's their timing, but it's not going to be dependent on early decision. Early decision is much more getting your spot confirmed. And again, there are drawbacks and pros and cons to early decision. So really consider that, because if you're going to do that and you're opting out of your decisions later on, that has its, pros and cons again. So do you want to be fully committed to that one spot only, not have the option to choose? Because what if you end up getting an award letter later on and you see another school that gave you a really great package, but you've already committed to this school that doesn't give you the same package as what you were looking at? Doesn't matter the order of schools listed on the FAFSA? That's a really great question. For some states, I know it does. I think for California, you just need to have a California school. So whatever state residency you're at, as just a safe practice, at least list one in-state college on there. So that way you're going to be eligible for your in-state grants. Even if you don't end up going to an in-state college, have that as an option so you can maximize your options. Don't take away from your options. But that's a really great question that came up. Thank you for asking that. There's a lot of questions in there. Is there any ones that are sticking out, Mayor, that I could go over?
Yeah, there was, I feel like it'd be helpful for us to maybe address this question on how families are impacted due to COVID. So there's two different topics that have come up. One is, what if you're expecting that your financial situation has changed? How do you communicate that? So there's a link. John, if you don't mind, put it into the chat for Carly. Then we can include that for folks with Swift appeal. But there's definitely an appeals process for every college. And you'll want to communicate your situation, because obviously your situation this year will be different from the tax year of 2019 that you submit. So you'll want to share your updated situation. There could be a different reason. The appeals processes have different reasons. So yours could be because of your changed financial situation, if you had a layoff or furlough or something like that. So you can communicate this to your financial aid offices. You should. And we know, after just hosting a couple different conversations with colleges recently, that they are beefing up their processes to start to respond to these issues, because they know that families have questions. The other part of it is, are the actual costs of college increasing or decreasing? And that's really going to be up to your colleges and or not your colleges, but the colleges, and how each of them are responding to the situation, whether or not they're actually managing a hybrid process versus fully virtual versus not. The colleges are actually, many of them are still opening up their housing for students who have housing insecurity and other challenges, to still be able to live on campus. So there are other costs with regards to college that are still there, even if students are not attending school in person. So I would encourage you to do is, for the colleges where you might be asking this question, they actually are pretty explicit about it on their website. So they'll say on the website if the cost of tuition has changed based on the implications from COVID. So I hope that answers the question, both in terms of making sure you advocate for any changes in your circumstances as a result of the situations that we've been facing, as well as making sure to take a look at the college and how they're expressing the changes in their costs as a result of the pandemic. John, anything you'd like to add to that, or any other questions you want to tackle?
Yeah, just to reinforce, with COVID happening, everyone should feel empowered to do the appeal process. Again, because family circumstances change, and part of that process will just mean that you need to verify the information, whether it's showing that a loss of income has happened, medical expenses happen, all the things that have happened in your life, to show that aspect of it. And this is important because FAFSA has taken your income from the previous year, right? So it's not really tailored to in the present moment, and that's where your appeal process can really support the student and the families, making sure they're getting the most financial aid as possible. Along with that, I want to highlight, there was one thing. I'm going to post a link for someone who asked that, because the QR reader didn't work, to make sure you guys get a link for our subscribe link. There was one other question as far as prices and tuition if it's going to go down or up because of COVID. That is really dependent on schools, but from what we've been seeing, most schools are not necessarily decreasing tuition prices. What we've seen is, of course, that for those who are not going to be on campus, they don't have the campus fee as far as on-campus housing and other things, but we haven't really seen tuition changes happen yet. This is why then it's going to be important to really make sure you're keeping your eye on the financial aid packages each school offer you, and really evaluate the value that school's giving you for the amount of money potentially you're paying out and investing to them.
Here's another question that maybe could be, if you have a response to it, John. What are the best ways to get scholarship or aid if you are ineligible for FAFSA or state aid?
So if you're ineligible for FAFSA or state aid, again, I think it's going to your school, because sometimes they have their own process and forms that you can show and document, so that way they can give you maybe more institutional aid. As far as scholarships, again, I think referring back to some of the ones that MERS already pointed out to, Rising Immigrants and other places that are supporting students and families in those situations and figuring out, just leveraging the community around you and seeing where the scholarship are being offered. But again, I think the biggest one is communicate with your college directly as much as possible. They may already have information for scholarships that they can assign to you. Some schools have emergency funding as well that are designated for undocumented students or other students that are not able to get certain funding that's going through FAFSA or other forms. So really just the communication part is the biggest aspect, always reaching out and stating what you need, right? And we shouldn't feel guilty about asking for what we need. It's okay to say, hey, I think I need more money. What do I need to do to make this happen? And I'm a testament because as a college student for myself going through this, I was in the financial aid office, my sophomore year, every week asking again, what's a new scholarship? What do I need to do? Consistently over and over until they knew my name. Then after a while, they start reaching out to me saying, hey, John, you want to apply to this? I'm like, yeah, let's go. Like, put yourself out there and make it happen to a certain extent, because sometimes we just overlook that aspect of putting ourselves out there, asking, and in a way demanding something be done for us, that we miss out on opportunities and miss out on money that's being left over. We've showed in our stats that, a ton of money was left on the table by students because they're not accessing them. Sometimes it's because of the way things are built that it's hard to find that and it's not accessible, but there is money out there. We've got to kind of just go after it.
All right, folks, so we're coming up on time. We're going to start shutting down in a few minutes. I think maybe the question here that makes sense to reiterate is explaining the gap information again, John. So I'm going to go ahead and put that slide up. And if you can give us just like your briefest summary of the gap in affordability and then your closing thoughts before we shut it down.
All right. So when we're talking about the gap, as far as how Moneythink thinks about it, which differentiates itself from other organizations or other ways of looking at it, is we want to first look at all the financial aid that's being given to you, but then remove work study, and we're going to remove loans out of it, because we want to know what is being offered to you in free money, right? So if the school costs $50,000 and we can say all your gift aid, the free money is $25,000, that gap then is $25,000 left for you. Now, after that gap, then we can start thinking about how can we pay for it? And so when we're looking at those numbers, we are saying these are the recommended amounts. We feel that a college will be affordable, especially looking from the lens of a Pell eligible student, because that's what our tool is really geared for, to support the most and maximize. That student on their own can access $5,500 in federal loans, a mixture of subsidized loan and a mixture of unsub loans. Within that, they can also get some work study amounts, right? So taking those two numbers to account, those are our guidance to affordability. So if you can stay within that range of that less than 7,500 gap, we know you can safely cover that on your own as a student without even having to rely on getting extra loans or maybe even money from family. Now, if you're getting to the somewhat affordable, essentially what we're saying is you're gonna have to break one of the recommendations we've given. Either you're gonna have to take out more than the recommended 5,500 we've suggested, or you might have to work a lot more hours. And that could be through work study or your own job off campus. Irregardless, it's you're working more hours. So that's where you're breaking one of those rules. Now in terms of not affordable, essentially you're in a position then where you're having to break all of our rules, right? Both the two guidelines that we're giving you. You're putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, especially as a Pell eligible student, because you are, one, already maximized your federal loans, and you're gonna be working unsafe amounts in work hours. And then on top of that, if you need more money, you're gonna rely on private loans or even Parent Plus loans, but those are not guaranteed. It's based on your credit. And if you're a student, you might not have credit already to apply on your own. So you're gonna be really dependent on a family member or an adult co-signing or signing that loan for you, which also presents another barrier to accessibility, right? So that's kind of the way we're talking about affordability in terms of how Moneythink thinks about it. If you're a family or a student that's not necessarily Pell eligible, these rules still apply. The only difference is that you can account for the resource that's coming from family, grandparents, but our suggestions still stay relevant. Like, we want you to stay within the realm of trying to take out 5,500 in loans or less, trying to work these many hours, and then the rest hopefully is then being covered by support from family, or maybe some savings that you put aside.
Thank you so much, John. Again, thank you so much to everybody who was able to join us today. Thank you to the National Society of High School Scholars for the opportunity to be here with you all this evening. Please stay tuned for a follow-up that would include a copy of this recording. Again, I'm sharing our screen, and apologies that our QR code didn't work for whatever reason. We'll make sure that the sign-up link is also included with the follow-up. And we did see all the thank yous in the Q&A, so thank you everybody for your affirmations. We hope you have a great rest of your evening. We hope you learned some information today that will help you in our search, all of our search for less debt, more degrees. Please stay tuned for more news from Moneythink about Decided, and have a great rest of your evening.